My mom slapped me across the face in a crowded restaurant because I refused to pay my brother's $300 dinner bill. That was the last time she ever got that close to me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I'm Melissa Grant, 28 years old, a nurse living in Chicago. My job isn't easy, but it's honest work. I've been on my own since I was 21, paying my way through school and taking care of myself. My family, though, has always been a different story. My mom, Caroline, raised me and my younger brother, Ethan, after our dad left. She liked to remind me of that often, how hard things were, how much she sacrificed, and how I should always look out for family. For years, I tried to be the good daughter. Every time they needed something, I was there. When Ethan got his car towed, I paid the fee. When Mom's rent was short, I sent her money. I even helped with Ethan's college debt, though he dropped out after 2 semesters. He's 25 now and still unemployed, talking about big plans that never seemed to go anywhere. Mom always said, "He just needs time, sweetie. Be patient with him." The thing is, patience costs money. My money. And I was tired. So when Mom called one Friday and said she wanted to have a nice dinner to celebrate her birthday, I thought maybe things were finally changing. She sounded happy, said she wanted to catch up as a family. I took a deep breath and agreed. I even made a reservation at a beautiful restaurant downtown, one I'd only been to once before. I thought it would be good to just talk, maybe reconnect. I got there a few minutes early, wearing a simple blue dress. When they arrived, Mom gave me a quick hug, and Ethan showed up 15 minutes later, grinning like he owned the place. He started ordering before I even sat down properly: steak, lobster, a bottle of wine, and 3 appetizers. I laughed it off at first, thinking he was just in a good mood. Mom looked so proud of him, nodding along as he bragged about some new business idea he was working on with a friend. I wanted to ask what it was, but she kept cutting me off, telling me not to stress him out with questions. I tried to stay calm. I smiled, listened, and even paid a few compliments just to keep the peace. But deep down, something in me felt uneasy. The way they were acting, it was like this dinner wasn't about celebrating Mom's birthday. It felt more like something was being planned behind my back. Still, I pushed the thought away. I told myself I was overthinking it. I ordered my meal, kept my voice gentle, and waited for the evening to go smoothly. But I had no idea that by the end of that dinner, everything between us would change forever. As dinner went on, I realized this wasn't just a birthday meal. It was another setup, the kind I'd fallen for too many times before. Ethan kept ordering more food: shrimp cocktail, crab cakes, another bottle of wine, even dessert before we were halfway through the main course. He laughed loudly, talking about how he was going to start a new business soon, a delivery app that would make millions. He didn't mention that he didn't have a job, a plan, or even money to start it. Mom nodded along, proud as if he were already a success. She turned to me and said, "You should be more supportive, Melissa. He's trying." I forced a smile and stayed quiet. That was how it always went. Ethan talked, Mom praised him, and I stayed quiet so I wouldn't be accused of being negative. Then came the guilt tripping. Mom reached over, touching my hand, and said, "You know, he's your only brother. Family helps family, honey. You've always been the responsible one. God blessed you with a good job so you can give back." Her words were soft, but I knew what they really meant: get ready to pay again. I tried to ignore the sting of it, but I couldn't stop the memories from flooding in. The time Mom called me selfish for refusing to loan Ethan money for a new phone when he already had 2 broken ones from carelessness. The time I paid his traffic fine so he wouldn't lose his license, and he didn't even thank me. The countless times Mom made me feel guilty for saving money for myself. Every time I tried to set boundaries, she called me cold, said I was turning my back on family. The truth was, I'd been saving for a long time to finally move into my own apartment. I'd been working double shifts, skipping nights out with friends, trying to build a little peace for myself. But somehow it never seemed enough. Whenever I got ahead, something happened: a family emergency, an unexpected expense, or Ethan's big idea. And every time, Mom convinced me to hand over the money with promises like, "We'll pay you back soon," or "You're doing the right thing for your family." Sitting there at that restaurant, I realized how tired I was. I looked at Ethan laughing, wine glass in hand, and Mom smiling proudly beside him, and I felt like an outsider at my own family's table. They weren't celebrating anything. They were using me again. I didn't say anything then, but inside, I could feel something changing. I was done being the dependable one, the fixer, the person who was always supposed to clean up their mess. I just didn't know yet that before the night ended, they were going to push me farther than they ever had before. And I was finally going to push back. When the waiter brought the bill, he placed it in the middle of the table with a polite smile. I glanced at it and felt my stomach twist. The total came to a little over $400. Ethan had ordered enough food for 3 people, and Mom hadn't held back either. I quietly added up what I owed in my head, around $70 for my meal and drink. That was fair. I waited a moment, expecting Mom to reach for her purse, but she didn't. She kept chatting with Ethan about his business plans, like nothing was happening. Ethan leaned back in his chair, sipping the last of his wine, completely relaxed. No one made a move toward the bill. After a few awkward seconds, I realized what was happening. They were waiting for me to take it, just like always. The old me might have done it without thinking, just to avoid a scene. But not tonight. I had already spent enough of my time and money cleaning up after them. I took a slow breath and said calmly, "I'll just pay for what I ordered." The air changed immediately. It was like someone had flipped a switch. Ethan stopped smirking and looked at me like I'd just said something unbelievable. Mom's smile vanished. She blinked a few times and said, "What do you mean, honey?" I said quietly, "I'm not paying for everyone. Just my part." Ethan gave a short, mocking laugh. "Wow, you're really going to make a big deal out of a dinner? It's just money, Mel." "Then you pay," I replied without raising my voice. He scoffed and looked at Mom. "See what I mean? She's gotten so cheap since she started living alone." Mom's face hardened. She folded her arms and said, "Melissa, don't be ridiculous. You know your brother doesn't have it right now. I raised you better than to embarrass family like this." I could feel people at nearby tables starting to look our way. I wanted to shrink into my seat, but I stayed still. I'd spent years being quiet to keep the peace. "Not anymore. I'm not embarrassing anyone," I said, keeping my tone even. "I just think it's fair to pay for what we each ordered." Mom's voice got sharper. "You know what? This attitude of yours lately, it's ugly. You've changed." Ethan muttered under his breath, "Ungrateful." My hands were shaking a little under the table, but I didn't let it show. I'd seen this pattern before, Mom getting angry, Ethan piling on, and me caving in. But this time I didn't give in. I just sat there and waited. The silence stretched for a few seconds. Then Mom sighed dramatically and said, "Fine. If this is the kind of daughter I raised, then go ahead. Pay for yourself." I nodded and reached for my card, my heart pounding. It felt like the smallest decision. But deep down, I knew it was the start of something much bigger. Mom's face turned red as soon as the waiter came back to ask if we needed anything else. She slammed her hand on the table so hard that the plates rattled. Heads turned immediately. "You're really doing this, Melissa?" she shouted. "You're embarrassing this family in public." The entire restaurant went quiet for a second. Ethan leaned back in his chair, smirking like this was a show he'd seen before. Mom kept going, her voice rising with each word. "After everything I've done for you, after all the sacrifices I made, you can't even pay for one dinner? What kind of daughter are you?" People were staring now. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck, but I didn't move. I kept my voice calm and said, "I told you, Mom. I'm paying for my part, nothing more." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. "You're ungrateful. You think you're better than us just because you have a job. You're a disappointment." Ethan laughed quietly. Maybe she needs a reminder of who's in charge here. That was it. Something inside her snapped. Before I could even react, she stood up and slapped me across the face. The sound echoed through the restaurant. My cheek stung, and I froze. For a moment, I didn't even know what to do. Everyone around us had gone silent. A few people gasped. The waiter stopped mid-step, holding a tray, unsure what to do. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who had called me her pride and joy when I graduated. The same woman who had turned every favor I ever did into a debt I supposedly owed her. Her eyes were cold now, full of anger and pride. She wasn't sorry. She thought she had won. I took a deep breath and straightened my back. My voice didn't shake when I said, "Can we please separate the bills?" The waiter nodded quickly and took the check. Mom looked shocked that I didn't argue or cry. I pulled out my card, paid for my meal, and left a tip. I didn't look at Ethan. I didn't look at anyone. Mom hissed, "Don't you dare walk away from this family, Melissa. You'll regret it." I finally met her eyes and said quietly, "Watch me." Then I picked up my purse, turned, and walked out. My legs were steady, even though my heart was pounding. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I walked past the tables. Some looked sorry for me, others looked uncomfortable, but I didn't care. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. My cheeks still burned, but I didn't wipe the tears that started to fall. They weren't from pain, they were from release. That night, something inside me finally broke free. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being their scapegoat. As soon as I stepped outside the restaurant, the cool air hit my skin, and my hands started to shake. My cheeks still burned from the slap, but the sting didn't matter anymore. What I felt most was a strange kind of freedom. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground and refused to let my mother guilt me into doing something I didn't want to do. I walked to my car slowly, trying to steady my breathing. The streetlights blurred through the tears in my eyes, but I didn't wipe them away. They weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of release. Years of holding in anger, disappointment, and exhaustion were finally spilling out. When I sat in the driver's seat, I gripped the steering wheel tightly and just let myself cry. I thought about all the moments that had led to this one. The night Mom made me skip my senior prom because Ethan needed a ride home from a party, and she said, "You're the responsible one, Melissa. He can't handle things like you can." I remembered sitting on my bed in my prom dress, crying quietly while my friends sent me pictures from the dance. Then there was the time Ethan dropped out of college after wasting an entire year's tuition. Mom had called me, crying about how his future was ruined and how a good sister would help. I had taken out part of my savings to pay off his debt, hoping it would give him a fresh start. He didn't even thank me. Instead, he joked about how lucky I was to have money to spare. Even when I got my nursing degree, Mom had managed to twist it. She told everyone at church that Ethan could have been just as successful if he'd had the same luck. That was how she saw my hard work, luck. And every time I tried to pull away, she found a way to pull me back with guilt and shame. Sitting there in the parking lot, I finally saw the pattern clearly. I wasn't their daughter, I was their safety net. Every time they messed up, they expected me to fix it. Every time I tried to build something for myself, they found a reason why I shouldn't. I turned on the engine but didn't drive yet. I just sat there, letting the quiet wrap around me. The sound of laughter from the restaurant carried faintly through the glass, but I didn't look back. That chapter was over. In that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. No more giving out of guilt. No more letting love be used as a weapon. No more feeling small to keep others comfortable. That night in the restaurant wasn't just an argument. It was my breaking point. The line I should have drawn years ago was finally clear, and I knew I would never cross it again. As I drove away from the restaurant, my phone started buzzing nonstop. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. When I finally pulled over at a red light, I glanced down and saw both their names flashing over and over again, Mom and Ethan. The first message came from Mom. "You're ungrateful. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat your own mother." Then Ethan's text appeared right after. "You embarrassed us in front of everyone. You think you're better than your own family now." Another one followed almost immediately. "Come pick us up. We don't have money for the cab." I just stared at the screen for a few seconds, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. Not one word of apology. Not one sign of remorse for what had just happened. They weren't upset about what they did. They were upset that I didn't obey them. Even after everything that happened in front of all those people, they still thought they could order me around like a child. My hands trembled as I held the phone. I could feel my heartbeat in my chest, heavy and fast. I scrolled through the messages, reading them one more time, then I opened the contact list. My thumb hovered over my mother's name for a few seconds. It felt strange, final, almost painful, but necessary. I pressed block. Then I did the same with Ethan. The screen went quiet. No more buzzing, no more calls, no more messages flashing across the screen demanding something from me. Just silence. It felt like the first breath of air after being underwater for too long. I drove home in that quiet. No music, no distractions. Just the sound of the engine and my thoughts. When I got to my apartment, I took off my shoes, sat on the couch, and let out a long breath. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for years suddenly felt lighter. I made myself a cup of tea, but I didn't even drink it. I just sat there, staring out the window, feeling the calm spread slowly through me. For once, there was no guilt twisting inside me, no voice in my head saying I was the bad one. I knew I had done the right thing. That night, when I finally went to bed, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the scene or question myself like I usually did after arguments with them. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I fell asleep easily. It hit me as I drifted off. What I had mistaken for love all those years was never real love. It was control, wrapped in guilt and expectation. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's manipulation. And I wasn't going to let it define me anymore. A few days passed before I heard anything more. The silence was strange at first, but peaceful. Then one afternoon, while I was folding laundry, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number right away, but when I answered, I heard a familiar voice. "Melissa, it's Aunt Linda." She sounded hesitant, almost careful. "Honey, I've been hearing some things, and I wanted to check on you." My chest tightened immediately. I already knew what was coming. She sighed and said, "Your mom's been telling everyone you abandoned her and Ethan at a restaurant. She said you refused to pay for her meal, even though she wasn't feeling well." I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath. That was exactly like my mom. Twist the story until she became the victim. I didn't even feel angry this time, just tired. "That's not what happened, Aunt Linda," I said quietly. She hit me. In public. Because I refused to pay Ethan's $300 dinner bill. She and Ethan expected me to cover everything again, like always. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Aunt Linda spoke softly. "She hit you? In front of people?" "Yes," I said. "And that wasn't even the worst part. She's been doing this to me for years, not physically, but emotionally. Guilt, blame, manipulation. Every time I try to live my own life, she finds a way to make me feel like a terrible person. I've paid their bills, their debts, even helped Ethan when he refused to work. And when I finally said no, she humiliated me in front of a room full of strangers." Aunt Linda didn't interrupt. She just listened. I could hear her sigh quietly. When she finally spoke again, her voice was gentle. "Melissa, I believe you. I've seen how she treats you at family gatherings. I just never knew it was this bad." Hearing that broke something open in me. No one in my family had ever said those words before. I didn't even realize how much I needed someone to believe me until that moment. My throat tightened as I said, "Thank you." I just couldn't do it anymore. I had to walk away. "You did the right thing, honey," she said firmly. "You don't owe them your peace." Sometimes walking away is the only way to stay sane. After that call, I sat in silence for a long time. It was strange. Validation felt both comforting and sad. Comforting because someone finally understood, and sad because it had taken this long. That same week, I made another big step. I looked up a therapist and booked my first appointment. I'd spent years ignoring my own pain, thinking it was normal to carry everyone else's problems. But I was starting to realize how deeply it had affected me. How much guilt I had been carrying that didn't even belong to me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fix anyone else. I was finally trying to fix myself. A month passed, and life started to feel different. For the first time in years, I woke up without a heavy heart. Work was going well, and I had been offered a promotion to head nurse at my unit. My supervisor told me I had earned it through my dedication and steady leadership. Those words hit me deeply because for so long, I'd been told I wasn't enough. That same week, I finally moved into my own apartment. It wasn't huge or fancy, but it was mine. The first night there, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes, eating takeout and listening to the quiet. No one was calling me for money. No one was yelling or guilt-tripping me. It felt peaceful, almost unreal. I could finally breathe in my own space without feeling like I owed someone an explanation for being happy. A few days after settling in, one of my old friends, Dana, texted me. "Hey, just a heads up, Ethan asked me for your number. He said your mom isn't doing well financially and wants to talk." For a few seconds, I just stared at the message. Part of me felt that old pull again, the urge to check if mom was okay, to make sure she had food, to be the good daughter. But another part of me, the stronger part, knew what this was. I had been through this exact pattern too many times. Every "I want to make amends" always ended the same way, with guilt, demands, and disappointment. I texted Dana back simply, "Thanks for letting me know. Please don't share my number." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about mom and all the things I wished I could say without it turning into another fight. So I pulled out my notebook and started writing. It wasn't for her, it was for me. In the letter, I told her everything I had never been able to say. I wrote about how much it hurt to always feel like the problem when all I ever did was try to help. I told her how tired I was of being treated like a wallet instead of a daughter. I wrote about how I forgave her, not because she asked for it, but because I needed to let it go. Carrying that anger had been like walking with stones in my chest. I was done letting it weigh me down. When I finished, I read it once, folded it neatly, and tucked it away in a drawer. I didn't plan to send it. The words had already done their job. Writing them down felt like closing a door that had been left open for too long. I turned off the light and sat in the stillness of my apartment, feeling lighter than I had in years. I didn't need their apology anymore. I just needed my peace, and I finally had it. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when I saw her. I was finishing some paperwork at the nurse's station when one of my coworkers said, "Melissa, there's someone asking for you in the lobby." I walked out, and my heart skipped. It was Mom. She looked so different, thinner, tired, and older than I remembered. Her once perfect hair was messy, and her eyes looked drained. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. She smiled weakly when she saw me. "Melissa," she said softly, "you look good." I just nodded. "Hi, Mom. What are you doing here?" She sighed heavily, as if the weight of the world sat on her shoulders. "I just wanted to talk. You can't keep ignoring me forever. I'm still your mother." Her voice carried that same tone I'd heard all my life, the one that mixed guilt with authority. It was the same tone she used whenever she wanted something. "I'm not ignoring you," I said calmly. "I just needed space." She shook her head. "You can't turn your back on your family forever, Melissa. Whatever happened that night, we can fix it. You know your brother's been struggling. I'm struggling too. We should be helping each other, not fighting." Her words stung, not because they were new, but because they were exactly the same as before. Nothing had changed. She still didn't see what she had done. She still thought love meant control, and family meant sacrifice, but only mine. I took a deep breath. "Mom, I didn't turn my back on family," I said quietly. "You just stopped being one." She blinked, looking confused for a second. "What do you mean by that?" I looked her in the eyes and continued. "Family should lift you up, not tear you down. It should feel safe, not painful. For years, I gave, and you kept taking. When I finally said no, you called it betrayal. But I was just choosing myself." She stood there, frozen. Her lips trembled a little, but she didn't respond. Maybe for the first time, she realized how far she had pushed me away. "I really hope you find peace, Mom," I said softly. "But I can't keep going back to a place that broke me." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she nodded slowly, her eyes glistening with tears she tried to hide. "I didn't think you'd ever talk to me like this," she whispered. I gave a small, sad smile. "That's because you never let me before." She looked down, clutching her purse tightly, and without another word, she turned and walked out. I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. When the doors closed behind her, I stood there for a moment, just breathing. That was the last time I saw her. There were no angry words, no screaming, just silence. And in that silence, I finally felt the kind of closure I'd been chasing for years. It's been 5 years since that night at the restaurant, but I still remember it like it happened yesterday. The sound of my mom's voice, the sting of her hand, the shock in the room when I stood up and walked away. For a long time, that memory hurt. But now, when I think of it, I don't feel pain anymore, I feel peace. That night wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of my real life. I learned that peace isn't something someone gives you. You have to choose it. For years, I thought keeping my family happy was the same as being a good daughter. I worked extra shifts, skipped vacations, and spent my savings trying to hold everything together. But the truth was, the harder I tried to keep them happy, the more miserable I became. It took losing them to find myself. Now my life is simple but full. I live in a small apartment that I decorated myself. I wake up to quiet mornings, make my own coffee, and smile because I know every single thing I have is mine. I go to work, I help my patients, and when I come home, there's no guilt waiting for me. Just peace. Sometimes people at work talk about family dinners or weekend visits with their parents, and I feel a small ache in my chest. I won't lie. There are days I miss the idea of having a loving mother, someone who supports me without strings attached. But then I remind myself, love that hurts isn't love at all. What I had with my mom and brother wasn't family. It was control dressed up as care. Over time, I stopped explaining my decisions to people. When someone asked why I don't talk to my family, I just said, because I chose peace. That answer is enough. It doesn't matter if others understand. What matters is that I do. I've built a new kind of family along the way, Friends who check in because they care, coworkers who celebrate my wins, neighbors who smile when they see me. These people may not share my blood, but they've shown me what real connection looks like. Respect, kindness, mutual care. No guilt, no manipulation. Every now and then, I drive past that old restaurant. It's still there, still busy, still full of laughter and noise. And every time I do, I whisper to myself, walking away that night wasn't cruel. It was survival. Because that's exactly what it was. I survived years of being the family provider, the emotional punching bag, the one who fixed everything and got blamed for everything too. But that night, when I walked out and didn't look back, I chose something different. I chose myself. And I've never regretted it. Not once. Because the truth is, peace feels better than approval ever did.